You can hear with them. Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We're just waiting for some opening notes So we'll get started in a minute.
Drop it in the big to Matt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
This is what I would share on my screen, right? That. Yeah. Just, well, I don't need to do it, so it doesn't matter. Use.
Headphones. Okay.
To 10 link.
Yeah, she said she'll email it to me. You can hear, right? Yes. Okay, she can hear.
They use that one.
Hey, can you guys give Birdie some attention, please?
Welcome to the June 2nd Planning Commission hearing. I am Chair Peterson. We are holding a hybrid public meeting which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy adopted on July 7th, 2022. Members of the Planning Commission are participating here in person, and they have the ability to do so virtually, but they are not as of right now. At this time, I'd like to orient everyone to our hybrid environment. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the Planning Commission website, the county's events calendar, and the email notification sent to email subscribers. Additionally, there is a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed and keep your microphone muted as you enter the meeting and during the meeting. The Microsoft Teams meeting chat will only be used to provide instructions for virtual attendees on how to register for public comment and to field general questions about Microsoft Teams. The Teams chat will not otherwise be monitored by staff or the Planning Commission during the meeting, nor will it be used to collect feedback. Unlike the Planning Commission's, nope. Sorry, we're using an old script. Public comments associated with agenda items can be provided by people attending in person and virtually. For in-person attendees, indicate this is not transferable. I'm sorry. We have some very important staff that are not here this evening, and they usually provide the script. Pardon? It's emailed to me? Okay. Well, but this is, they can't sign up to do public comment. Okay, well, I will freestyle a little bit. Public comment was required for earlier sign up. So if you are here tonight and you have signed up in advance, we will call you during your appropriate time. Otherwise, you are welcome to email us or the county board any feedback or comments you have about any of the agenda items. Okay. When virtual attendees are called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. Madam Clerk, can you please call, or Mr. Clerk, can you please call the first agenda item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is an ordinance to vacate portions of Fee Simple County right-of-way for Campbell Avenue, South Randolph Street, and South Quincy Street, subject to reservation of easements for public sidewalk and utilities purposes on properties owned by Street Retail, Inc., located at 4015 to 4047 Campbell Avenue, 2700 South Quincy Street, 2754 to 2780 South Quincy Street, and 2766 South Arlington Mill Drive. We have Mike Haluski here from DES to provide the staff presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Michael Haluski from the Department of Environmental Services Real Estate Bureau. Here to present this matter this evening. And really at the very start, what we're trying to do here is if you think about the east block of Campbell Avenue in Shirlington, the county actually owns all of the land between the buildings, from the face of building to face of building, in fee simple. And that's a little unusual for the county. Typically, we would just own in fee simple to the back of curb and then have sidewalk easements on the private property, sidewalk and utilities easements. So at a very high level, what we're trying to do here is to make that area conform. So the areas that are currently improved as the sidewalk areas, to convert those into sidewalk easements. So at a high level, these are the sort of real estate transactions that would allow us to achieve that. So the subject portions of the right-of-way were dedicated to the county in fee simple by a deed that was recorded in August of 1958. The subsequent development of Shirlington Village, according to the Shirlington PDSP, constructed the buildings where they are today, and it's basically right up to those right-of-way lines. So Typically, as I mentioned, the county has the fee-owned right-of-way dedicated to the back of the curb, and then beyond that, the areas of the sidewalk are on private property, but within public easements for sidewalk and utilities purposes. So because these sidewalk areas adjacent to the buildings are within fee-owned public right-of-way, it creates some challenges for staff and for the owner to make changes, particularly for things like canopies and awnings. There's lots of canopies and awnings for each of the individual retailers and restaurants in the village. And you can see here an example of the canopy for the Astro Beer Hall. This is just one example, but this, because it's into a fee-owned right-of-way, it requires a legislative action by the county board. So we have to take an ordinance of encroachment to the county board each time we would want to change one of these. Otherwise, if this were just a sidewalk and utilities easement, staff would be able to evaluate those encroachments typically on an administrative basis. They wouldn't necessarily require legislative action. So this proposed ordinance would vacate the county's fee simple interest in the right-of-way where we have the sidewalk improvements and reserve a public sidewalk and utilities easement over the entirety of those vacated areas. So again, the net effect is to convert the areas improved as sidewalk from fee simple county right-of-way to a public sidewalk and utilities easement. The ordinance also requires the deed of vacation to include a restrictive covenant that runs with the land that states that the vacated areas won't be included in as calculating site area for the purposes of calculating density. That's just to make sure that at least as part of this action, there's not sort of a density windfall to the property owner. They would have to come back to the board in the future if they ever wanted to seek to have that covenant removed. So here we have a plat that's generally showing the areas being vacated both on the north and the south side of Campbell Avenue. And again, it's between the backs of curb and the faces of the building. It does wrap around a bit. A little bit on Randolph, but more so going north and south on Quincy Street also. And here we have another view with the aerial turned on. So staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission is that you would find that this vacation as proposed is consistent with the comprehensive plan of Arlington County. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Also know Mr. Cummings from Walsh Colucci is here. He represents the applicant. I don't think there's a presentation from the applicant, but he's also available to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Did you have anything you'd like to say?
I think Mr. Hulewski covered everything fairly well. We do concurrently have a minor amendment and a PDSP amendment going to the board on June 14. Those address streetscape upgrades, upgrades to the public realm, investments in that space. This application itself is not directly related to that. We're handling it because we've been in front of the county on other actions. And so we're taking care of a number of things that are related to Shirlington right now. There's also been an admin change for some facade upgrades elsewhere in the village. And the comprehensive sign plan has been updated at the same time, also administratively. But like Mr. Hulewski said, this will return streetscape interests to where they really should be under Arlington's legal regime. And I don't think that the county realistically is losing any rights here. They retain the ability to put utilities into the streetscape. It will continue to be governed by the site plan conditions, by the zoning ordinance and other applicable policies. So the county really loses nothing here. It's just putting us into a regulatory regime where we can handle things administratively and not be going to the board for things as simple as a canopy over the beer hall. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cummings. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public speakers on this item?
No public speakers on this item.
Okay, and any commissions to speak to us tonight?
No commissions on this item.
Okay, and Commissioner Lantelmi, anything from Transportation Commission?
Yes, this was brought up at last Thursday's Transportation Commission meeting. There were a few technical questions, but other than that, it was recommended as consistent with the MTP unanimously by the Transportation Commission.
Thank you. And is there a committee chair report for vacations? Okay, so let's open it up to discussion. Any clarifying questions to start off? Okay, and Commissioner Weir.
I'm just trying to get a sense of who exactly the applicant is. Street Retail Inc. Is that the entity that owns the shops? What's the relationship of the different parties here?
Yeah, Street Retail Incorporated is a federal realty entity and it owns the retail.
Okay, so then the use of any use that would be approved of the streets would be between the tenants and the owner of the retail units. Is that right?
I think it's more accurate to say that the street itself, right, the portion that we would now own that would have an easement over it, which is the sidewalk, would be used consistent with county regulations. There are individual retail tenants, meaning restaurants with outdoor dining, things like that, that would continue to be regulated as it normally is. I suppose I could say individual tenants come forward with applications sometimes for an awning or something like that, and this means they don't have to go to the board. But we always, as a federal realty entity, would have to consent to that application too, et cetera.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Patel. Okay, Commissioner Patel has a motion.
Okay,
Here's.
I find that, I move that the Planning Commission find that the ordinance to vacate portions of fee simple county right-of-way for Campbell Avenue, South Randolph Street, and South Quincy Street, subject to the reservation of easements for public sidewalk and utility purposes on properties owned by Street Retail Inc. located at 4015-4047 Campbell Avenue, 2700 South Quincy Street, 2754 to 2780 South Quincy Street, and 2766 South Arlington Mill Drive, identified as RPC numbers 29-020-001-004-023 and 29-019-024 with conditions is substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan of Arlington County, Virginia.
Second.
Okay, second, introduced by Commissioner Patel, seconded by Commissioner Striner. Any comments about the motion? Okay, then we will move to a vote. Commissioner Lantelmi,
Aye.
Commissioner Weir,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger is not here yet. Commissioner Bagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara,
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey. You weren't here for the presentation, but if you read the report, I'm fine to have you vote.
I will abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Striner,
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson,
Aye.
and I also say aye. So that passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, and 1 abstention. Okay, thank you very much for the work that you did on that report and your presentation and for moving this along. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Clerk, do we have another agenda item?
Yes, item number 2 is an ordinance to vacate a portion of the easement for public street and utilities purposes at the northeast corner of 18th Street South and South Bell Street on the southeast portion of Parcel 5, Crystal Square, RPC number 34-020-251 with conditions. And we have, again, Mike Haluski from DES.
Thank you. Again, Mike Haluski with the Real Estate Bureau and DES, here to present this vacation, somewhat of a similar circumstance where again, these are sort of the technical real estate transactions where we're trying to take a small piece of area that is an existing street and utilities easement on the corner of 18th Street and South Bell Street, and sort of convert that into a sidewalk easement. So that's sort of at the high level what we're doing here. So the subject easement for public street utilities purposes that was originally conveyed to the county in 1973. There was an original ordinance of vacation that was approved in 2018, along with a special exception site plan amendment for this site, for site plan 90. That was approved as part of a package of 6 ordinances, ordinance A through F. This one was ordinance F. Ordinances A through E were perfected and recorded by the applicant. This one wasn't, because we had a subsequent county project, the 18th Street Streetscape Improvement Project, that we knew was going to be engineered and was going to change the geometry of 18th Street and this intersection. So we wanted to make sure that we had that geometry further developed before proceeding with the vacation. Now we have that geometry further developed, and so we'd like to proceed with the vacation. Okay, so here we have a plat showing the area. It is just a small area where we're proposing to vacate that. We are currently working with the applicant and WMATA regarding WMATA parcel, but particularly with the applicant as it relates to this on subsequent dedication. So the rest of the easement area that is out here, that is the roadway, that will be dedicated to the county in fee simple. And then behind the back of curb, they'll be dedicating a new public sidewalk and utilities easement. And this is, again, another view, just the aerial view of the area that we're talking about. It's just right at the corner, small area at the corner of 18th Street South and South Bell. So similar to the first ordinance, staff would recommend, oh, actually, this is the Transportation Commission. I apologize. It should be Planning Commission. Well, we would recommend that the Planning Commission find that this particular ordinance is substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan. I also want to point out that some of the graphics in this presentation were updated from the ones that were on the agenda. So I've emailed this updated presentation to Ms. Johnson for the record. That concludes my presentation. Again, happy to answer any questions. And I know that we have Mr. Allman and Mr. Corbalis from Venable LLP. They represent the applicant. And I believe they have a short presentation as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Hey, Matt, can you speak? You can raise up the height and make sure your mic is on as well.
That one seems to be working. Thank you. Well, good evening again, Commissioners. Matthew Allman with Venable, representing JBG Smith, the landowner. We have a very brief presentation, but I don't think I need to go through the whole thing given the very thorough briefing that Mr. Haluski just made. We'll just quickly orient you to the vacation area with the graphic on the top right, just for anyone who's wants to see where it's located. It's at the corner of 18th and South Bell, where there's currently a curb line that's going to be bumping out as part of that 18th Street project. Actually, if we could, Jay, if you don't mind just flipping all the way to the final slide, I think we should just show that very briefly. Jay, if you don't mind advancing the slideshow just to the final slide. Okay, well, in the interest of your time, I'll just reiterate this is merely a technical update to make sure everything behind the curb is not within a street easement, but in a sidewalk easement so that it aligns with that 18th Street project. Everything forward of the curb that's actually in the roadway will be dedicated in fee. And so this is just a technical cleanup to make sure that those county property interests actually align with the new 18th Street design. Oh, there we go. Here's the final image, just so you can kind of see how this is all working together. That area in red is basically just being converted from street easement to sidewalk. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk, are there any public speakers this evening?
No public speakers on this item.
Okay, and any commissions to speak with us?
No commissions either.
Transportation Commission, Mr. Lantelmi.
Yes, as
Commissioner
was mentioned earlier, this was before the Transportation Commission last Thursday. There were some clarifying questions, but really not much in the way of discussion, and the commission voted unanimously to find it consistent with the comprehensive plan, the MTP.
Thank you very much. And again, no committee chair report. Any comments or questions, clarifying questions, thoughts? Okay, then we can go to a motion if Commissioner Patel has one, I think.
I move that the Planning Commission find that the ordinance to vacate a portion of the easement for public street and utilities purposes at the northeast corner of 18th Street South and South Bell Street on the southeast portion, parcel 5, Crystal Square, RPC number 34-020-251, with conditions is substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan of Arlington County, Virginia.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Patel introduced the motion. Commissioner Streiner seconded. Anything? Do you want to speak to your motion? Okay, then we will go to a vote. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
And Commissioner Steinberger is not here yet. And Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
And I also say aye, so that is 9-0 to 0. Okay, thank you very much for your work on that. Thank you for the application. And we will move right along to our third agenda item. Mr. Clerk, can you introduce that, please?
Yes, thank you. The third item is a consideration of the enactment of an ordinance pursuant to Arlington County Zoning Ordinance, Section 11.3, to designate the Brennan House and Lot located at 2002 North Stafford Street as an Arlington Historic Preservation Overlay District, in which district boundaries shall include the entire property identified as RPC number 06-010-031 and the adoption of associated historic district design guidelines. This ordinance would make the property subject to Arlington County Zoning Ordinance, Section 11.3 and Section 15.7. And we have Michael Tawney and Lauren Ferris from staff to present. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Michael Tawney, and I'm the Associate Planner with the County's Historic Preservation Program. And with me is Lauren Ferris. She is the HPP Supervisor. And tonight we are here to present the local historic district designation request for the Brennan House, which is located at 2002 North Stafford Street in the Cherrydale neighborhood. The LHD nomination was submitted by the property owners, Joan and Thomas McIntyre, who have been working with HPP staff throughout this entire process. As is our practice, we present LHD nominations to the Planning Commission for their consideration before the County Board considers the nomination. So on the screen is a map that shows the proposed LHD boundaries. As you can see, the LHD overlay would only apply to the lot at 2002 North Stafford Street, and it would not apply to any of the neighboring properties or parcels. In the interest of time, I'm only going to cover some highlights of the property's history tonight, but a detailed history of the property is included in the designation report for the Brennan House. So during the early and mid-19th century, the property was undeveloped, and there is no evidence to suggest that the property was utilized as a Civil War hospital, which was suggested in the initial LHD application for the property. After passing between a few different property owners, the land on which the Brennan House would eventually be built was sold to Erasmus Preston in 1887 Preston was a farmer and a real estate developer. And as you can see on this map here, the Prestons owned 3 different tracts of land in Cherrydale, in addition to the 16 acres on which the Brennan House was eventually built. Preston developed many of the 2-story Victorian houses along North Stafford Street during the 1910s. This is why Stafford Street was originally called Preston Avenue. However, records do not indicate that the house at 2002 North Stafford Street would have been one of those houses developed by Preston. And upon his death, his wife sold the 16-acre tract to George Rucker. And he used this 16-acre tract to create the West Cherrydale subdivision, which you can see on the screen here. This was one of the earliest and largest of the initial subdivisions of Cherrydale, and most of the houses in the subdivision were constructed between 1907 and 1925, and the area outlined in red is where 2002 North Stafford Street is located. Like many subdivisions developed around the turn of the century, West Cherrydale had restricted deed covenants, which prohibited the sale to certain individuals based on race. Specifically, the deed for the lots at 2002 North Stafford Street stated, quote, "Nor shall said property, nor any portion thereof be sold, leased, or bequeathed to any person or persons not of the Caucasian race," end quote. Restrictive covenants were a means by which developers and property owners could maintain segregation. By limiting where people could and could not purchase property, it all but ensured that integration did not occur within parts of the county. These types of covenants became commonplace in Northern Virginia by the early 20th century. And the inclusion of this covenant in the deed for 2002 North Stafford Street offers information into how West Cherrydale developed and is an example of the inherent racial segregation of Arlington's early development. In 1915, Frank Brennan bought the 3 lots that became 2002 North Stafford Street. Frank Brennan was the son of Irish immigrants, and he worked in the construction field. And specifically in the 1920s and 1930s, he worked in the housing industry as a carpenter. Given Frank Brennan's skill set and industry access, it is likely that he built the house at 2002 North Stafford Street. Records indicate that the house was constructed by 1920, but that it was constructed in 2 phases. So initially, the house was built as a 1-story dwelling. And you can see that here on this 1929 Sanborn map. The house is only shown as 1 story in height. It also shows a 1-story garage to the south, and then another structure to the west of the building. This other structure was likely an outhouse. Outhouses were very common in Cherrydale during the early 20th century. And eventually the house was expanded in the 1930s, which you can see on the map here. By 1936, the house was 1.5 stories in height. Notably, the outhouse is gone, which presumably means they had indoor plumbing at that point. It should be noted that in my research, no physical or documentary evidence was uncovered to suggest that the Brennan house is a prefabricated house like a Sears kit home, although those were used in Cherrydale in its early development. So the Brennans lived in the house at 2002 North Stafford Street for over 40 years. And then in 1961, the Brennans sold the house to Dewey and Mary Smith, and it was under their ownership in 1972 that they built a addition and screen porch on the rear of the house. And then in 1984, the Smiths sold the house to the current owners, the McIntyres. So as I noted earlier, the Brennan house was constructed around 1920, likely by Frank Brennan. The Brennan house is a modestly styled 1.5 story craftsman dwelling with a bungalow form. The bungalow form was one of the most prolific forms used for residential architecture in Cherrydale, with the most common being 1.5 stories in height and featuring a side gable roof with dormers, of which the Brennan house is an example. Although there have been changes made to the property over the years, the house has several original features on both the exterior and the interior. The biggest change to the house was the construction of the rear addition and screened porch in 1972. And now we'll flip through a couple photographs of the house itself so you can see what it looks like. This is the front elevation. And this is another shot, southeast oblique, which shows the front and then the side. And it's on this side of the house where the garage was originally located and where the original driveway is located today. This is the rear elevation. You can see the pergola and patio, which was added in a few years ago. And then the other noteworthy thing to note in the photograph is the bathtub that has been cleverly refurbished as a planter. That's about the location of where the outhouse would have been. This is an image that shows a bit more of the 1972 rear addition to the home. And then this is just another angle of the house. So HPP staff and the HALRB, or the Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board, find that the Brennan House meets designation criteria A, B, E, and K as listed in section 11.3.4.A.4 of the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance. A property has to meet at least 2 of the 11 criteria in order to become a local historic district. So criterion A applies because the Brennan House is already listed as contributing to the Cherrydale National Register Historic District. Criterion B applies because the history of the Brennan House is in part a history of Arlington's historic development. Cherrydale became one of the most significant residential suburbs of DC, and the Brennan House contributes to the cultural and architectural heritage of Cherrydale and therefore Arlington. Criterion E applies because the Brennan House is a craftsman dwelling with a bungalow form, which was one of the most popular housing styles utilized in Cherrydale. Furthermore, the house was constructed during one of the earliest phases of development in the neighborhood, and therefore represents a particular phase of the neighborhood's growth. And finally, criterion K applies because the house has a high level of architectural integrity and has been well preserved over the last century. So today we developed design guidelines for all local historic districts. So as part of this process, they were developed for the Brennan House. The purpose of design guidelines is to assist the current and future property owners, county staff, and the HALRB in the preservation of the historic character and physical integrity of the Brennan House. The guidelines are intended to protect the most important physical aspects of the house and ensure that any changes are respectful of and compatible with the existing fabric and architectural character of the district. So on March 19th, the HALRB voted unanimously in favor of the designation and adoption of the proposed design guidelines and directed that the nomination be submitted to the county board for consideration. Tonight, HPP staff seek the support of the designation by the Planning Commission. After tonight's meeting, the designation will next be considered by the county board at their June meeting. If the county board votes to approve the designation, the Brennan House will become the county's 43rd local historic district. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have an applicant presentation, but I understand, Mr. Clerk, that we have a public speaker who is the owner of the property who would like to talk.
That's right. We have Ms. Joan McIntyre.
Come on up, Commissioner McIntyre. And you're welcome to come up to the podium because I think technically you qualify as a public speaker.
Yeah.
Sure. Perfect.
Great. Good evening. Joan McIntyre and my husband, Tom, is right over there. As the owners of the house, we're really excited about this moving forward. What really attracted us to the house when we bought it over 40 years ago was that, you know, it had all these features that really are typical of early 20th century. And we've really tried to protect those features over the years. We actually, and the inside is equally unique as the outside. In fact, it's, you know, it's got lots of good oak floors, woodings, a tin ceiling in the kitchen. And so, you know, we really do try to maintain that. We really actually hated to have to lose the tin roof that we had, except that one too many leaks just didn't make it feasible to keep it on. So we're really excited. You really enjoyed all the learning a lot more about the history. It kind of confirmed some things that we knew about the house, and other things that we had heard turned out not to be true. So, you know, it's been kind of fun. A little bit disappointed about the restricted covenant that bans us from producing and selling alcoholic beverages. We actually knew about the other one too. So, But again, that's part of the history of the property. So it's kind of important to preserve that information. Again, the, guidelines do not seem to be particularly onerous and they make sense for the most part. I think maybe the big perspective is to think about putting on my environmental hat is making sure that they're really not any restrictions that would really continue to modernize the house to the 21st century. For example, solar panels, or even simply just putting in heat pump units on the outside, is to make that as easy as possible. After all, we're not going to stick to authenticity and go back to coal-fired boilers. So again, we're excited, and we actually hope that neighbors will actually take this as an example, because we've got several other homes right adjacent to us that could also be designated historic.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner McIntyre. Are there any other public speakers?
We do have Commissioner Katie Myers from HALRB, who is online. I believe she is representing that organization, so she'll get 3 minutes.
Perfect. Commissioner Meyer, you are on.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm Katie Myers. I serve as the chair of the Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board, and I'm happy to be here tonight speaking on behalf of the HLRB in support of the local historic district designation of the Brennan House. At the March 2025 HLRB hearing, we unanimously voted in favor of the designation and adoption of the proposed design guidelines and directed that the nomination be submitted to the county board for consideration. The HLRB found that the property met 4 of 11 consideration in order to become a local historic district. And the Brennan House is a wonderful example of a craftsman style home in Arlington. It contributes to the architectural heritage of Cherrydale and the county. And it is quite typical of many craftsman bungalow houses that we are losing all over the county that are being torn down. So we are very excited that the property owners sought out this designation and fully support the designation of the property. We ask that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board designate the Brennan House as an LHD and adopt the proposed design guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Mr. Clerk, any other commissions?
Excuse me, no other commissions.
Okay, did Transportation Commission hear this? No, and we do not have a committee chair report, so we can open this up for discussion. I'll just say I had a handful of questions that I sent over to staff earlier today. They provided very prompt responses, which were very helpful. I circulated those to the commission, and so those should be part of the public record. Do we have additional comments or questions? Commissioner Bagley? Oh, okay, please go ahead.
As somebody who's in residential real estate, I'm thrilled to see that you are doing this. My own home, which is a row house, 1938, was also, it's historic Monroe Courts. So I do hope that the message goes to the neighbors, because without this, I'm sure that house would not be standing for a long time after you make whatever decision. So I'm thrilled that I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
If I can just ask one quick question to Ms. McIntyre's comments about this wouldn't prevent putting solar panels or heat pumps on the property, correct?
There we go. No, it would not. There is a in the design guidelines for the property, both of those projects would fall under either 2 categories: the heat pump and other like HVAC and those types of equipment. It would be, they could apply for what's called an administrative certificate of appropriateness that's processed by staff within 2 to 3 business days. Solar panels on the rear of the house would also fall into that category. Solar panels on the front side of the house, because of their high visibility, would need to be reviewed by the Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board. And so they're not prevented, but there's an additional level of review.
Okay, thank you. So we can preserve our historic homes as well as be sustainable. So that's lovely news. And Commissioner Steinberger.
Somewhat echoing Commissioner Bagley, I just really wanted to provide my wholehearted support for this as well. It's exciting as a former member of the HLRB to see this sort of initiative move forward from the actual homeowners. And I do hope that it sets a nice example for your neighbors and anyone else sort of in the county who might have a home that could similarly be, so designated, and give a chance to kind of learn the history of sort of, where individuals are living. And I just think that's really wonderful. So I'm excited to support this. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Striner.
Not done yet. So I had a question with the National Register of Historic Places. I know you asked that in the email, but I'm a little fuzzy on how this clicks into that. And is this only specific to this particular lot, as that's spread out to the whole neighborhood? Like, could you kind of like educate me on that a little bit?
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. Feel free to chime in too. So I think the best way to describe the National Register is that is a federal listing. And so this property would kind of have like two layers of protection, so to speak. Although I should clarify that being on the National Register does not offer any sort of like protections in the way that a local historic district does. Being on the National Register is purely honorary. It's a great honor. It's a really useful tool because it does give you access to tax credits. But it doesn't prevent things like demolition or insensitive additions or things like that occurring on properties that are in a district. A local historic district can apply to a single building, or it can apply to multiple. So Brennan House is a great example of a single family home, but Maywood is another one of our local historic districts, and that has 200 plus. Okay, thank you. That one has 200 plus properties located within the local historic district. So you can have both designations. A lot of our local historic districts do. It's just that both of the tools kind of have different functions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So if the National Historic thing gives you the resources and the ability to do renovations, this sort of provides the status to make sure that demolitions and substantial changes to the property don't happen without the county being involved in it one way or another.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say myself to what Commissioner Steinberger and Commissioner Bagley were saying. Often when I'm talking to my neighbors, I hear them lament that we're losing the charming, smaller starter homes in the county, and that these smaller, charming homes are often more attainable than some of the homes that are replacing the properties when we're tearing down these older homes and building a much, much larger, bigger home. So I think it's nice to have the historic homes stay in our community just for the respect for history, but then also because it kind of makes sure Arlington can continue to be a place where people of all different income levels can have the ability to live. So let's go to a motion.
The motion. I move that the Planning Commission adopt the attached ordinance, Attachment A, designated the Brennan House located at 2002 North Stafford Street, RPC number 06-010-031 as a local historic district.
Second. Commissioner Striner seconds. Commissioner Patel introduced the motion. Okay. Commissioner Lantelmi, or sorry, any discussion? Would you like to speak to your motion?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Striner.
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
And I also say aye. So 9-0-1. Okay. Thank you very much.
I have a second motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the County Board to adopt the attached Brennan House Historic District Design Guidelines, which are attachment D to the staff report.
Do I have a second?
Aye.
Second.
Wait, Commissioner Guevara. Commissioner Guevara. Okay, introduced by Commissioner Patel, seconded by Commissioner Guevara. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No.
Okay, then we'll go to voting. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye, for real this time.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Striner.
Abstain.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
And I am also aye, so we are 9-0-1. Okay. Any other motions?
Nope.
Hearing none.
That's it.
Thank you very much to staff for your work on this report and also to our neighbors, the McIntyres, for introducing this. So this will go to the county board. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Clerk, can you introduce the next item, please?
Yes, this is a two-part item. Part A is form FBCN 25-0002, use permit for preservation and renovations of the Barcroft apartment buildings number 41 and 44 through 46, located within section 6 and 7 of the overall apartment complexes with modifications pursuant to the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code for setback and parking requirements associated with the underlying zoning district for the existing buildings to remain located at 4200 13th Road South. Part B is FBCN 25-00003, use permit for preservation and renovations of the Barcroft apartment buildings number 1 through 11, located within section 1 of the overall apartment complex with modifications pursuant to the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code for density, setback, and parking requirements associated with the underlying zoning district for the existing buildings to remain located at 1100 South Thomas Street. And we have Olivia Sontag from CPHD Planning here to provide the staff report.
Hi, good evening. Olivia Sontag with the Arlington County Planning Division. I'm joined online by my colleagues, Robert Gibson with the Department of Environmental Services and Melissa Danowski with our Housing Division. So these are the 5th and the 6th Neighborhoods Form-Based Code use permits for preservation and renovations to existing Barcroft Apartments buildings. We have combined them into one single presentation for you all for efficiency. They are adjacent to each other and they also deliver very similar improvements. But they are two separate items and they will require 2 separate motions. And then following the staff presentation, the applicant does have a brief presentation to share as well that will also combine both use permits. So specifically, these use permits are for, the first item is for A. This is for preservation and renovations to Barcroft Apartments buildings 41 and 44 through 46, as well as modifications to the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code for setbacks and parking requirements associated with the existing buildings to remain. And then the second item for B is for preservation and renovations to buildings 1 through 11 with modifications to the form-based code for density, setback, and parking requirements associated with the existing buildings to remain. So before we move into the details of both of these use permits, I wanted to just provide some of the context for where these 2 use permits fall in relation to all of the use permits that you all have considered over the past couple of years. So we do have 4 renovation use permits that have been approved. We currently have renovations 5 and 6 under review, and then we anticipate the 7th use permit to come forward sometime this fall. So you all will be done with us visiting you with these. We have been processing some use permits for redevelopment. The first one was approved by the county board back in February of 2025 for 110 CAF units located at 4320 Columbia Pike. You can see that on the map here on the screen. And then we also have another application for market rate construction that's currently under review and anticipated to go to the county board in July, which would deliver about 260 market rate units. So we do anticipate that approximately, when all said and done, there will be 970 CAF units in the renovation areas, and then the balance of that will be provided in new construction, such as that use permit that was approved in February, which delivered the 110 CAFs. So on to the 2 use permits. So both Both of the sites are within the Columbia Pike corridor. This is an excerpt of the general land use plan map, and it shows the revitalization district boundaries in the black dashed lines. The neighborhoods area boundaries are shown as note 24 and 24A, and both of these sites are within 24A, which is the neighborhoods conservation area. And both of these areas are also designated low medium residential on the general land use plan. So both sites are also zoned RA 1426, multiple family dwelling district, and are within the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code boundaries. The applicant has opted to use the optional zoning tool to pursue a neighborhoods form-based code use permit for these renovations. This on the screen is an excerpt of the Central Sub-Area Regulating Plan map, and it shows both use permits are within what we call conservation area boundaries, where buildings are anticipated to be preserved. There is a portion of one of the use permits that includes an area that's designated as adjacent to conservation areas, and the applicant has opted to preserve an existing or an additional building in that location. Both of the use permits also include some designated preserved natural areas. They're shown in the green outline. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen here, but there are portions in both renovations 5 and 6. And the applicant is preserving those areas and enhancing them with additional tree canopy and vegetation. So I'll give a brief overview of the components of each application. A lot of these are just requirements of the neighborhoods form-based code. And just additional items that are conditions of approval. So for renovation 5, again, we're looking at buildings 41 and 44 through 46, so 4 units in total. The unit count in this case decreases from 224 CAFs to 223 for the creation of an additional 3-bedroom unit. And you can see the unit breakdown here, where they have created a couple additional family-sized units. They're also converting 3 units into type A accessible units and delivering 3 private resident amenity areas. They also do have, they're requesting modifications for existing buildings to remain. So this includes modifications to the parking requirements. And then for renovation number 6, these are buildings 1 through 11, as well as 2 garages. The unit count in this case increases from 307 to 312. They're able to increase the number of units in this case because they're delivering additional family size and accessible units. So this is a modification under the form-based code that was recently adopted by the county board to allow for additional units to be created when they are accessible units or family-sized units. In this case, there are 5 units becoming type A accessible units, and then they're delivering 4 different private resident amenity areas, a playground, and a playfield. Both of the use permits, again, preserve or deliver some of those natural preserve areas, both preserving them and enhancing them. And then both of the use permits are going to earn the National Green Building Standards Silver certification. So on to the review process. As with all of the previous Barcroft renovation use permits, this item went to the DRC once and to the HLRB twice as they reviewed any of the exterior renovations and changes needed, particularly for adding basement windows where they're adding additional units. This item went to the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group in May. Members were glad to see some of the new 3 and 4 bedroom units being added and had some questions about how that unit mix was accomplished. The applicant explained it was accomplished by reconfiguring existing inefficient layouts and using some of the existing basement space that's no longer needed. There were also questions about lighting throughout the site to help improve safety. So the applicant did respond that they have completed a lighting study to improve safety around the property and replacing and adding lighting in strategic locations, including at the building entries along some of the pathways of the site and in the parking areas. They raised no other concerns with the application and were supportive of the proposal. This item will be highlighted at the Housing Commission meeting this Thursday, and then we anticipate this going to the County Board on June 14th. And that concludes the staff presentation. So I'll pass it back to you for the applicant presentation.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Kathy Puskar with Walsh Colucci. I've been sent here this evening by my associate Lauren Riley, who is the renovation expert, but is on a much deserved vacation. So bear with me. Once again, Kathy Puskar, I do have Alice Hageman with Jair Lynch, Jeff Krebs with VICA, and then our architect Martin Olivier is, I believe, participating virtually. So let me walk through this quickly. As Olivia pointed out, we really have made a lot of progress, and it's always great for us to see this map, to see that we created this vision. And when I say we, I mean the community, us, the Planning Commission, County Board, and now we're executing. So it's really exciting to see. And we are looking today at 5 and 6. Next. This is just a good reminder for us. This obviously has changed our orientation. So Columbia Pike is on the left hand of this slide. But just to look at kind of the phase 5 buildings that we'll be talking about were constructed in the late 1940s. And then the phase 6 buildings we're talking about are some of the very first buildings to be built in Barcroft in the early 1940s. Next. Don't want to spend too much time, but did just want to kind of highlight, the existing condition of these buildings. And I believe, as Ms. Sontag said, we are trying to take advantage of the window wells on these basement areas where we can convert basement storage and mechanical spaces into actual units. So this is phase 5, some of those existing buildings. And next. And then this is section 6. Next. These renovations are very similar to the scope of previous renovations where we're cleaning the brick, repairing and replacing roof fixtures, older air systems, painting railings and non-original shutters, removing and replacing basement steel sash windows, adding new penetrations on those rear elevations for exhaust and venting. The highlight is we are creating 8 accessible units, as Ms. Sontag walked through. And in order to do that, we do need to add accessible ramps and entrances, revise our parking configuration to create 88 parking spaces, and relocate our trash areas. And then another big piece of this renovation is to do exterior resident amenity areas. One of the things that I did want to point out, we are retaining building 3, as Ms. Sontag said, which is within that potential redevelopment area, but we're also saving all of building 6, which formerly was going to be partially demolished for an amenity center. And we heard desire from HLRB that we save those units in that older section of Barcroft, and we've been able to achieve that. So I think that is an improvement over the original contemplated plans. Next. This is just kind of honing in on our landscape improvements because they are part and parcel of the overall vision of Barcroft, which is here, most importantly, increasing those biophilic path connections and landscaping and creating biophilic areas for the Barcroft residents, new plantings, new trees, new gathering areas. Next. And in phase 6, you'll see that we have a playground, we have a sport court, multipurpose play field, and once again, those smaller, more discrete areas where we have seating and places for people to gather informally, and then also focusing on screening some of those necessary utilities that are above grade. Next. We did meet with the DRC and HLRB in February and April for both projects. They were supportive of the project and once again appreciated the preservation of those buildings that I mentioned. The feedback was mostly concerned with the basement unit windows and appearance of railings that were required by building code. And we did a few design iterations to settle on a pipe railing, very similar to the existing railing, but with thin wiring that would meet the requirements, but also be minimize the appearance of that. Next. These are just some of the VHDA minimum design and construction requirements that we did have to meet that are a little bit alternative from what the HLRB would typically want, but everybody understands that that is something that we can't avoid and need to provide. And mostly these are located on the rear where we have our accessible entrances because we have other entrances where we have little vestibules and therefore could avoid putting those awnings. Next. And the roof overhangs, this is the same, looking at the exception for those type A units. And so we are before you today to allow these building renovations, and also as part of the neighborhood's form-based code that allows us modifications for the density for those accessible units, and to also allow the setbacks and parking that we have to be legitimized through this modification. And then, did I miss anything? Did I screw anything up?
No.
Okay, great. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, are there any public speakers?
No public speakers for this item.
Okay, and do we have any commissions to speak to us tonight?
No commissions either.
Okay, Transportation Commission.
No, this is not before Transportation Commission.
Okay, and Form-Based Code Working Group?
I spent that evening celebrating my daughter's 6th birthday, so I'm going to defer to Commissioner Berkey, who chaired that meeting.
I think that was time well spent. Yes, so I chaired the May meeting on this. I think Olivia covered it pretty well. There wasn't certainly no opposition, very supportive. I mean, again, to provide some context, we're kind of midway in kind of the process as far as all of this. So a lot of this has already really been decided and discussed. But Olivia was saying, talked about, the unit mix and the enhancements done with the basements, as Kathy was saying. I keep bringing up lighting. I will continue to keep bringing up lighting as a concern raised by residents. But we talked about that, and then parking as well. And we can talk about that in commission discussion. But generally speaking, the advisory group is very supportive of this project.
Thank you very much. So we can open it up to discussion. I'll follow our usual agenda. Does anybody have clarifying questions or comments about site location, land use, or the site design? Commissioner Patel?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to go first because I have my light on.
Do it.
Okay.
Ms. Sontag, this is roughly an equivalent presentation to what we saw last year, right? We are just literally, I say that really for my colleagues up here. We have been here before with a similar request. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Weir.
I think it's worth pointing out, though, that it might be the same changes, but it's different buildings, right? Yeah. Or similar changes. I just want to celebrate a fact.
Okay.
There is another, as some of the other buildings have gotten coverage, some of the other potential buildings that might be built as part of the greater Barcroft area have gotten some coverage. I have already seen, as I'm sure others will, complaints here and there about why are there no committed affordable units in these new buildings, and we have just gotten the presentation on where those committed affordable units are. There are 1,300 of them. So that's great. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to building form and architecture. Oh, Commissioner Steiner.
Well, on that thread, I just also want to celebrate this because I saw there's a 4-bedroom in there. That's great. I'm gonna go to bed with a smile on my face. We got a lot of different mixes in here, and I love all the spaces, accessible units. I just think this is a great development, and I just want to piggyback off what Commissioner Weir was saying on that front. I just think there's a lot of good here in what we're doing.
Yes, I'll add that I am very happy to see family-sized units, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, happy to see type A accessible units. I was wondering how the accessibility aspect would play with the historical preservation aspect of it, but it sounds like HLRB addressed that and are comfortable with the decisions being made. So really excited to see that. Okay, any other questions or comments related to transportation, sustainability, biophilia, public spaces? Glad to see playgrounds being added.
I'll just weigh in real quick here.
Commissioner Berkey?
Yeah, and we talked about this. I mean, there are these shared spaces, right? And enhancements have been made. And one of the things, again, to echo the celebratory mood, it really is. I mean, this is moving fast as far as Arlington projects go, right? We're approving use permits. I cycle by and drive by and I see, work being done. But one of the really exciting parts about this project is these enhancements. We're getting more. And like, I think we might get even more like as things go along and Gyre Lynch kind of finds opportunities. So, public spaces, I'll keep pushing the lighting because we heard that a lot. We continue to hear that, when the construction starts, there's going to be displacement of parking. It's going to happen. There's construction, right? Folks are going to figure out where to park, give each other grace. But I'm hoping, Gyre Lynch and the county sees maybe more opportunities to add lighting, add different things. It's a big property. It's a challenging property, but it's just so exciting to see more opportunities kind of explored and at the pace that we're seeing it. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Berkey. We'll go on to community benefits. Questions about or comments about process phasing and construction. Commissioner Berkey.
I mean, again, it's a comment because we talked about it in the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group. We've talked about this for a year and a half, right? Which is just, again, we know that Gyre Lynch is really going to work on communication, during the construction. We're living through a lot of construction on Columbia Pike right now on the east end. It's going to be unpleasant for a little while. So I'm confident that you guys will continue to communicate with the residents about where they can park and what that's going to look like and what that's going to mean to them. We haven't even talked about tenant relocation, but again, as far as tenants relocating temporarily as well, I'm confident that you're going to put a lot of effort into that as you have already. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to move to motions?
I have a motion.
Okay.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board approve the subject use permit in accordance with the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code, Article 11.2 of the Zoning Ordinance Appendix B, for preservation and renovations of the Barcroft Apartments Building Number 41 and 44 through 46 located within Section 6 and 7 of the overall apartment complex, with modifications pursuant to the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code for setback and parking requirements associated with the underlying zoning in district for the existing buildings to remain subject to the conditions of the staff report.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, introduced by Commissioner Patel, seconded by Commissioner Berkey. Would you like to speak to your
No, thank
motion? Okay, then we will go to Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Weir,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger,
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara,
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey,
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner,
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
And I also say aye, so that's 10-0-0. Okay, do we have another motion? We have at least one more. Well, we're doing both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Here,
Okay.
I think that's it. That's not the one we just did.
This is the one I just did. Okay, thank you. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board approve the subject use permit in accordance with the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code, Article 11.2 of the Zoning Ordinance, Appendix B, for preservation and renovations of the Barcroft Apartments Building Numbers 1 through 11 located within Section 1 of the overall apartment complex, with modifications pursuant to the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code for density, setback, and parking requirements associated with the underlying zoning district for the existing buildings to remain subject to the conditions of the staff report. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, introduced by Commissioner Pell, seconded by Commissioner Streiner. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Okay, then Commissioner Lantelmi,
Aye.
Commissioner Weir,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger,
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara,
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey,
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner,
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
And I also say aye, so that's 10-0-0 again. Are there any additional motions on this item? Okay, well, we will be talking about Barcroft in our July meeting and as well as for the 7th renovation project in the fall. So more to come on this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you
evening.
to staff and the applicant for your work. Okay, Mr. Clerk, do we have our last agenda item of the evening?
The last item is Arlington's transportation future endorsement of the vision and goals for the refreshed transportation element of the comprehensive plan. And we have Kristen Calkins and Allison Bullock here from DES to provide the staff presentation.
Just give me a second. It kicked me out of the meeting, so I have to rejoin. Good evening, everybody. I am Kristen Calkins. I am a principal transportation planner in the transportation planning group at DES. Tonight, I am joined with the deputy project manager for Arlington's Transportation Future, Brian Shelton, the transportation planning group manager, Allison Bullock, and with us virtually tonight is Nate Graham, who is our outreach specialist or one of our outreach specialists on this effort. We are very excited to be here tonight. To request that you approve the resolution endorsing the vision and goals that we've established for the refreshed transportation element of the comprehensive plan. And we're going to walk you through how we got here today and the great community input and process that has led us to the proposed vision and goals. Quickly, we just kind of want to talk about why we are doing this now, why a refreshed plan for Arlington County is important. And to start with, many of you know that the current MTP was established almost 2 decades ago. And while it has served the county well, it no longer kind of serves us on our daily basis. A lot of the values and priorities that we have as a county have shifted. Transportation preferences have changed. Best practices in transportation planning have evolved. And we have a number of new transportation technologies in general. And we need a plan that supports the board, committees and commissions and staff as we work towards improving the transportation network throughout the county, from things like the CIP, when we review site plans, and when we plan for capital improvements and corridors. A refreshed plan will be grounded in a number of the county's existing commitments to things like equity, our Vision Zero principles, and other established community priorities. It will help establish the consensus we need moving forward to develop and implement projects within the county, and it will allow for clear decisions as we work through corridor studies, as it will set priorities as part of this process, and this understanding of what the network is working towards through this planning process will help us streamline projects and save money in the future. We all know that there are a lot of things that Arlington's transportation network needs to do. It has a number of pressures put on it on a daily basis. This plan will help us look at all of those needs holistically within the network. It will help us identify how to prioritize the use of our constrained right-of-way. It will provide guidance on trade-offs among the varying modes, and it will help people understand how we make decisions moving forward. One of the things to consider as we develop this refresh plan is we are going to integrate all of the individual modes today, there's 6, into one cohesive document so everything talks to each other. As part of this process, we will be creating modal hierarchies and priorities for the major corridors within the county so that we know when we look at a corridor, what the most important mode to think about is. Those priorities will be used looking at the physical constraints of the road, of the anticipated future travel demand and need, safety visions and Vision Zero, bounded in Vision Zero, and really working towards creating a network that works for everyone, that moves people the way that they want to move and the way we want to ensure that they continue to move sustainably in the future. From this work, we'll also identify kind of top priorities for future study coming out of the transportation plan. Sometimes it's really important to understand how we're getting to what we're doing. This plan isn't kind of coming from nowhere. It's building on a lot of foundational work that's come before it. We have the transit strategic plan within the county's DES, our Vision Zero action plan, the transportation decarbonization plan, our commuter assistance program strategic plan that was recently adopted. All recent information that's coming into this process for us to build off of, as well as a number of important county priorities that we're already aware of. Vision Zero, equity, the sustainability, climate resolution, resilience, all of these things that the board has said are important to the county. We are building off of that. That has been foundational to kind of how we've established the goals for the proposed change. And we'll talk about that a little bit moving forward. And then one of the things we always think is really important to talk about and recognize is what this plan won't be doing. It won't be creating a laundry list of projects. Rather, it will identify areas where priority corridors exist, where we need improvements to the right of way, and where we have the most specific needs for improvements for mobility and to manage future transportation demand. We also won't be making recommendations beyond the ground plane. This is a surface transportation plan. We're talking building face to building face about what the county can do with its transportation network to move people in the most sustainably, enjoyably, most comfortable way we can. And we also won't be developing detailed design guidelines. If a need for them is identified through this planning process, it's something that we'll identify as an action to come out of the robust plan that will be created. It's a little bit of a highlight of where we are. We're currently wrapping up the vision and goals process. We had 2 phases of public engagement that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a moment. And in the fall, we pivot into the robust development of policies for the transportation plan. So today we're talking about the vision and goals. We have done a lot of work to get here today. 2 phases of public engagement that had a significant amount of community involvement, conversation, input as part of that process. In the fall, we went out and we talked to people through pop-ups, interactive interactive map, a questionnaire. We had listening sessions with harder to reach communities. We had open houses. We also looked at detail about the existing kind of priorities and policies the county has. We looked at peer cities transportation plans to make sure that we kind of understand what best practices are happening around us nationally. We established an advisory group. We have an advisory group member with us this evening. Shout out to Commissioner Steiner, that helped us through this process. We also have a number of internal staff working groups, not just within DES and transportation, but we're talking to all of our sister agencies because this plan works with all of the other priorities the county has. Transportation does not exist in a vacuum. It coordinates across multiple disciplines.
Hawkins, if I may interrupt really quickly, because I see you have 48 slides.
Oh, those are hidden.
Okay, yeah, so it's usually about a 15-minute presentation. Perfect.
And in phase 2, we went back hearing what we heard from the community in phase 1, and we said, this is the proposed vision and goals that we heard, and this is what we think the draft vision and goals are. A little bit of a highlight just of engagement by the numbers. We like celebrating this, so I will elaborate a little if you indulge me, because we had such robust engagement across both phases, 76 days of public comment, 52 events staffed by so many staff members. We had over 12,000 interactions with individuals. Our website got over 15,000 hits, and we had approximately 2,500 feedback forms filled out. We heard from the community as part of this process. In phase 1 engagement, we asked people how they travel today, how they would like to travel in the future, and what's the shared vision for transportation in the community. This helped us kind of establish just what people's priorities are, what they want transportation to do for them. And we heard that transportation in Arlington is actually pretty good. People appreciate all of the investments the county has made. Doesn't mean that it can't be better. People walk. They walk today. They want to be able to walk in the future. People take transit. They appreciate our transit network, but they would love to see it improved. Especially important considerations for people when they travel are time and the reliability of the mode that they're choosing, be it transit, walking, biking, driving. They want to know that the trip is going to be reliably the same amount of time. Everyone wants to feel safe. If you're walking, if you're taking the bus, if you're driving, that is top of mind. And equitable access across the county is a priority for people that we talked with during the first phase of public engagement. During the second phase, we asked people, does the draft vision that we've shared reflect your ideal future for transportation in Arlington? Do the draft goals reflect your priorities? And did we miss anything? And we asked people to tell us if we did. What we heard, top takeaways from that second phase of engagement, is that the draft vision and goals that we brought to the community were relatively reflective of what they'd shared with us in phase 1. People saw their feedback in what we brought to them. People recognized that draft statement that we brought out should integrate sustainability. There was strong support for the goals People really thought that the goal should be people-centric, and we made some tweaks to modify that in response to that feedback. We heard that people just don't want to be safe on the transportation network. They want to feel safe while they're traveling. And then again, reliability is a top concern. It was a theme that we heard. So how did this help us get to what we're bringing today? A nice reminder, just as we think about the vision and goals, is that we're talking about high-level policy right now. The vision speaks to kind of that high-level desire for our future, and the goals, while a little bit more specific, are still high-level. They don't get into the weeds like policy will and the specifics and targets that we're thinking about as we develop this plan. Again, these vision and goals are establishing county priorities, equity, environmental sustainability, the desire for people to get around by multiple transportation options. Vision Zero, our commitment to economic opportunity and affordability within the county. This is just a quick high-level overview of how we got to where we are today. We had phase 1 engagement that was backed up by the input that we got from existing conditions, from county policies. That all fed into the development of the draft goals that we brought to the community in phase 2 engagement for their feedback. We took what we heard from phase 2 and we made a number of modifications to the draft vision and goals. We brought those refined goals to the advisory group and our different staff working groups for feedback, and that helped us create the proposed vision and goals.
If I may interrupt again, I know you have a lot of like meat that are in the following slides, and I don't want to have to cut you off when you're talking about like the goals and the vision. So this is all very important, and we have the report and we reviewed the report. So maybe if we just slide through to, yes, the vision and the goals.
Next, I was just about to go. So the proposed vision is people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities can move safely, comfortably, and seamlessly in Arlington. Everyone can rely on a variety of high quality, sustainable transportation options to get them where they want to go when they need to be there without having to depend on a car. Arlington focuses on making travel an enjoyable experience for people, connecting them with nature, friends, family, and opportunities. A few key changes were made to this statement from the draft to the refined. It stays the refined to the proposed. We integrated high quality in response to what we heard from people, as well as sustainable that we really heard was important to the community. We brought in without having to depend on a car as a clause because we really heard from people that they don't want to have to drive. They want to make sure that they can get around the county by sustainable modes. And we also recognized that the transportation experience should be enjoyable. And the last statement is now opportunities instead of jobs, recognizing that there's a lot of different places people in the county need to go that aren't just economic employment. We have 6 goals. The first that we are proposing is equitable and inclusive, create a welcoming, affordable, and accessible transportation system for people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities, while working to eliminate historical disparities in transportation policy and investment. This was a well-received goal, both through public engagement and at the advisory group. We did modify this to include affordable following phase 2 engagement. Transportation needs to be affordable to be equitable and inclusive. People need to be able to afford their trips. Livable is our second goal. Create a transportation system that provides enjoyable spaces and improves quality of life, affordability, economic vitality, physical and mental well-being, and a sense of community. We made a few modifications to this following phase 2 engagement. We removed maintains quality of life, hearing from a lot of our listening sessions that those communities do not feel that their existing quality of life is something they want to see maintained. They want to see it improved. Following the conversation with the advisory group, we integrated the term enjoyable spaces into this goal. Enjoyable spaces are really important. It's not just about moving, but it's kind of how that experience is. If you have shade trees while you're walking down the street, if you have a maintained bus shelter when you're waiting for the bus, those are all really important components of the transportation network that aren't just what it does for people, it's how you feel while you're traveling. Reliable is our third goal, previously known as connected. It was changed based off of the robust feedback we got from the community in phase 2. The statement supporting it is provide an interconnected transportation network that is dependable, convenient, and well-maintained, enabling all people and goods to seamlessly reach their destinations in the county and region. This did not change significantly from a written component. We changed convenient from seamlessly or easy to use. We added the clause and the region, recognizing that a lot of people need to reach destinations that aren't just within the county, but within the region to live their lives. Our fourth goal is safe. This one was universally appreciated by most people taking our different types of engagement. It reads, prioritize a safe and comfortable travel experience for all people and eliminate transportation-related deaths and serious injuries. We added the term "and comfortable" into this following our second phase of engagement. People really commented on the fact that while it's important to be safe while they're traveling, they want to feel safe. They want to have a comfortable experience while traveling, and that is what we should be working towards. Our sustainable goal has evolved significantly from both the draft to the refined to the proposed. It now reads, develop a transportation system that moves more people with less traffic, supports a cleaner and greener environment, and advances climate protection, resilience, and adaptation. A few important changes that we feel we made were the clause supports a cleaner and greener environment. That used to talk about mitigating impacts. We heard that that wasn't a positive take for a goal. So by integrating the term cleaner and greener environment, we're able to think about both what we do to the environment from a greenhouse gas perspective, but greener to us also thinks about all of the opportunities we have within the right of way to integrate nature, street trees, bioswales. It's our kind of holding place for future policies about how we integrate natural components within the right of way. And then the clause protection advances climate protection, resilience, and adaptation, was the modification done specifically to integrate the most recent county board resolution. And our sixth goal is transparent and accountable. Clearly prioritize and communicate competing demands within the transportation network and responsibly manage public resources to deliver and maintain an exceptional transportation system. This is a complete rewrite from the draft. We had a lot of positive feedback when we explained to people what we wanted to do with the draft, that we acknowledged that we have a lot of hard decisions to make with how we prioritize the right of way. It just wasn't landing with people. So they were like, that's great, say that. And we went back and we rewrote the goal to be a little bit more understandable for people who aren't transportation wonks. So those are our proposed vision, the proposed goals that we as staff brought to Transportation Commission last week.
Okay, I have to interrupt again because I think we're at 20 minutes now.
I have one more slide.
Okay.
They had one modification. They recommended a slight tweak to the sustainability goal. I'm sure Commissioner Liatome will speak to this, but they had some concerns about the clause with less traffic and recommended the modification to through multiple options. So with that, presentation is done.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the important work that you did. And we saw this presentation a few weeks ago at LRPC, and it was wonderful work that you did then and a great presentation then. So I think we are ready to go to public speakers. Do we have any public speakers on this item, Mr. Ford?
No public speakers on this item.
Okay, and do we have any commissions that would like to speak to us tonight about this item? Commissioner McIntyre from C2E2. Oh gosh, can we get her a microphone, please? This is riveting stuff. That one. Okay. During a recent flooding, I think all of our tech was destroyed and some of it may not be up to speed yet. So thank you everyone for your patience.
Good, thank you. Again, Joan McIntyre speaking on behalf of Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission. We did send a letter that we approved on our May 20th meeting, so I hope you got that. But in general, I mean, overall we support this broader vision of, moving more people with actually less traffic was really, it's kind of reducing vehicle miles traveled, the characterization of a transit network that is convenient, comfortable, affordable, works for all people, for all times is really important and very important for looking at addressing the climate crisis and really trying to get people out of their car and moving in different directions. We are a bit concerned that the doesn't really fully embrace the role of climate change as part of transportation policy, with the county's recent climate resolution, as well as its carbon neutrality goal. Really, we need to be thinking of this master transportation plan as really the climate action plan for transportation, and it should be kind of more broad reaching than it would seem to be at the moment. And, you know, the vision and the sustainability goals is fine, although I'm not really keen about with dropping the less traffic. That was kind of, you know, that's one of the goals they've always talked about, is reducing vehicle miles traveled. But, you know, we probably have preferred something a bit more specific, that we're really aiming to get to carbon neutrality, to reduce and ultimately eliminate greenhouse gases from transportation, which actually account for 36% of the county's carbon emissions. So it's pretty critical. So again, thinking, you know, not so much beyond the broader vision and goals, but as we get into the policies and strategies, is making sure that this really is a comprehensive whole of government approach to transportation. Some areas in specific is continuing and advancing the shift to electric and other zero emission vehicles, helping to support the development of EV charging infrastructure, as well as even thinking of procurement policies of low carbon cement and other ways of reducing carbon in construction projects. More broadly, there's some, you know, kind of thing we've often tended to advance, you know, looking at merging micro transit options and also meeting some of the APS needs through, say, ART. NVTC has recently come out with a very ambitious, you know, bus rapid transit program. So all of these things that are out there that really, you know, hope to be, you know, comprehensive as part of that. And also looking at how do we actually divide ways, you know, as traffic does go down, narrowing streets, removing some parking for more trees and other infrastructure. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntyre. Okay, we'll go to Commissioner Lantelmi for the transportation report.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, as Ms. Culkin mentioned, this was at the Transportation Commission, both April as an information item and last week as an action item. We had, not surprising, a lot of discussion on this, but it was, for the most part, very, very complimentary of the goals and vision that's being presented. The only thing we really we did also note that from April to May, a number of changes were made in response to comments that we made in the April meeting, and they were very much appreciated. We did go ahead, though, and voted to amend one of the goals in this, which is the sustainable goal. Right now, there is a phrase in there that says "with less traffic." We voted instead to replace that with "through multiple options." And the vote on that was 7-2. The two dissenters would have just stayed with the existing language. The reason for this change was to make clear, to sort of remove any misinterpretation of what less traffic would mean. Having been, you know, all of us have been to a lot of SPRCs, and we've seen how almost every one of them, when someone does not like that development, they hone in on the traffic that it's going to generate. That most of our projects will generate potentially more cars on the site than is there now. We did not want this phrase "with less traffic" to be used to say this project can't go forward because you're adding traffic. And making it clear that what we're trying to do is provide people with multiple options, which, as we've demonstrated over the past 20 years, when people have options, they take them. Our vehicle miles traveled have been relatively stable over the past 20 years, even though we've added almost 100,000 people into the county. And with adding 100,000 more people, we have not added 100,000 more cars. Even with more cars in each of those projects. So, we are growing, but our traffic isn't growing. So we really didn't have to get to the less traffic. It's really more of the multiple options we felt was the heart of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give people options so that when they have them, they will, since most people like the idea of walkability, if you can make it walkable, people will do it. So anyway, that's the rationale for the Transportation Commission to make that change to that one particular goal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this update went to LRPC, and we have our LRPC chair here, but we also have our advisor on this item here. So do you both want to do an update, or?
Can I just ask you to rewind the slide to the goals since it has the updated language given Commissioner Lantelmi's comment?
Do you have an update, or Commissioner Steinberger?
I'm happy to defer to Commissioner Schreiner since he's been through the whole process, and then I can add anything if there's
Okay, perfect.
anything to
Commissioner
add.
Schreiner, can you give us a
Yeah.
committee update?
Yeah, I mean, I've been updating the commission here monthly as we've been meeting, and I don't even know how long ago it's been since I've started this. But it's been, it's been a very, I think the means that we used to engage with the public is something that should be looked at going forward. We tried a lot of different methodologies. I don't even know how you all made sense of all of the data. There's just so much of it. And so I think there's really not a whole lot to add. The working group was full of every different commission that we have here in the county. So it was a very representative sample, not only of the commissions, but the data that we were looking at was representative of a lot of different groups across the county. So I thought it was very, if you're going to get a data set and a group to look at this is the way to do it. But I feel like these goals are pretty representative of that discussion that we've basically had over the last 18 months or so, or however long I've been doing this. And so, yeah, I don't really have much to add beyond that. I'm looking forward to go through goal by goal and see if you all think we're missing anything with these or anything you all like to add.
Okay, Commissioner Steinberger, did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, not really anything to add. I mean, I think LRPC had a productive conversation. I don't recall anything sort of jumping out as sort of like huge things to change or address. So.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so Commissioner Schreiner recommended that we go through the vision and the goals. I'll go through them quickly one by one. If you have something you want to say about one of them, you can ask a question or make a comment, and we'll go through them and then talk about what might be missing, and then any comments on community engagement process. So here's our proposed vision. Does anybody have clarifying questions or comments about this vision? Commissioner Guevara.
Yeah, more of a comment, I suppose. I'm wondering to what extent do we really need sort of the clause without having to depend on a car? I feel like it kind of villainizes, folks who use cars. It creates this false dichotomy. I know we had someone send in comments about substantive research about how cars enable lower income individuals to have better access to jobs, and particularly now that increasingly Arlington is becoming so much more expensive. We're going to have people commuting from further away where we don't have access to public transport. So I just think it kind of adds this level of judgment that I'm not sure really helps to. That's all.
Yeah,
I suppose. Thanks.
Commissioner Weir.
I respectfully think that I could not disagree more. If there's nothing here that says that you shouldn't use a car, it says without having to use a car, right? We live in an environment where everything is built for drivers, for motorists, right? Even a common and valid criticism, an often correct one, of any bike or ped infrastructure is that it ultimately ends up just being vehicular infrastructure. That investing in something for pedestrians is really just investing for something to make it easier for cars, to get pedestrians out of the way. What this says is that if you want to use a car, use a car, but it celebrates and elevates the option to not use a car, to use active transportation, to bus, to do anything else. I think that this language is probably the most impactful phrase or clause that I've seen in the entire thing, because it says that our plans will allow for something other than the infrastructure that by forcing people to use for lack of other options has boiled the oceans, killed children, killed pedestrians, caused wars, right? Like the lack, the policy problems of forcing people to use cars. We could have a long conversation about. Yeah. What this clause says is, let's design a system that doesn't force you to use a car. So I think that what this language is about, it's about people who want an alternative. It's not about people should feel bad to use a car.
Thank you. Commissioner Patel.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Weir, I disagree with you. I think that the sentence in and of, well, a couple of points that I want to make. One, we should not be inherently including our policy narratives and ideologies. I mean, certainly there are people who are on this dais right now that very vehemently believe in car-free diet. They do. They believe in car-free diets, and there are others on this dais that maybe are not on that end of the spectrum. And so when you put language in there that doesn't need to be there, the issue is getting people where they want to go and when they need to be there. Irrespective of whether you have a car, whether you depend on a car, whether you're using ride sharing, whatever it is, it's antithetical to the goal of inclusion, which is one of your 6 highlighted goals. You get the same point by saying we want to get you to where you want to go and when you need to be there without that clause. So I do agree that singling that out means something. And I don't know if I'm necessarily comfortable with having that phrase in there when it's not necessarily there. At the end of the day, I think that there are lots of people that are on this commission, that are on the planning commission, and on this particular commission that's developing this policy document, that very firmly believe in different modalities in terms of getting from one place to another. And I will say, for the record, we need every single one of them. But to say without having to depend on a car or an electric bike or a scooter or your feet, like, we don't need to say all that. We can just say where you want to go and when you want to be there, and get rid of the language that can feel like an attack on somebody or feel like exclusionary language.
Commissioner Berkey.
I'll be brief. Try to bridge the gaps here. I certainly appreciate the sentiment of Commissioner Gavada and Commissioner Patel. And when I read this and I read the materials, 3 things stuck out at me. It's dependability. I think that's what Commissioner Patel was speaking to, is dependability of the choices you make. That's the second thing. It's a choice, right? I would love folks to choose things other than cars. But a lot of times it's not a dependable choice, right? I drove tonight because I was at a Little League game. I would have preferred to bike, but it didn't make sense, right? But I also want a safe choice, right? So all 3 of those things sort of need to exist. I think we would like people to choose certain things, but I think the crux of this vision is we want to give folks choices and options, and then ultimately what they choose to do, this is my view, they choose to do, right? But we're giving them that space. So maybe we could use language instead of saying without having to depend upon a car, like however they decide to travel, because I think that's really what we're really trying to get at, is giving people that opportunity to have choice. Because a lot of times you just don't have an opportunity to choice because you got to be a place at a certain time and the bus ain't going to get you there when you need to be there.
Right. So I'll say I personally don't read this phrase as villainizing people who drive. I interpret it as giving people the option to not have to get in a car. So cars are expensive, gas is expensive, insurance is expensive, and we know cars are very bad for the environment. So it's giving you the option to not have to depend on one. If you want a car, you can have it. If you want to, drive to Virginia Beach for the weekend, great, but you shouldn't have to depend on it to get to whatever job you are going to, whether it's a government job or a landscaping job or a restaurant or, Amazon. So I like that it says you don't have to depend on it in order to be in Arlington. And it does acknowledge that cars aren't great for the environment, but I don't see it as demonizing one. It's just saying, wouldn't it be nice to not have all of those expenses, your car payment, your insurance, your gas, if Arlington facilitated a way for you to get where you needed to go without depending on all of those things.
I think it's making too much of a personal choice for people. I mean, everything you've just said about somebody's whatever vehicle type they're picking, whatever their car insurance payment is going to be, like those are all people's individual and personal choice. You are now infringing on their ability to make those choices for themselves. At the end of the day, and I think to meet you at your middle ground, what this could say is everybody can rely on a variety of high quality, safe, and sustainable transportation option to get them where they want to go when they need to be there, and strike out the without having a car language because it's inherent. It says a variety of high quality, add safe and sustainable transportation options. Once you throw in that word sustainable, you are automatically talking about not having one person in a car. You're automatically talking about that because sustainable is just the other side of the coin of climate, right? Like it's an environmental, that language connotes environmental language. And so you don't need that. You're basically doubling down on that language.
Okay, so we have a lot of lights. Commissioner Steinberger first, then Commissioner Weir, then Commissioner Lantelmi.
So I do think that the phrasing is a little problematic in terms of sort of singling out cars as a mode of transportation. If we wouldn't have said the sentence without having to depend on a bike, without having to depend on a scooter, without having to depend on your feet, I don't really view the sentence as being helped by this sort of additional clause. And I do think that it intentionally or unintentionally adds a potentially politicized element to it that's just sort of unnecessary. We already talked about sustainability, as Commissioner Patel has addressed. I'm just not sure that, like, so to speak, you need to say the quiet part out loud here. Like, I don't think you do. So I think I would be happier with the vision statement if it didn't call out the, car element to it. I just don't see the need. Thank you.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
I think that Commissioners Patel and Gavar are correct in that if you get rid of that, it really doesn't do violence to the vision. But the reason it's partly in there is history. Arlington, most people don't realize, before World War II, Arlington had a streetcar system. It had alternatives to driving because, after all, cars were still new at the turn of in the early 1900s. And this suburb developed as what was called a streetcar suburb. So there were options then. That's why we have a tight street grid. That's why we have sidewalks in our oldest neighborhoods. And you can still see traces of where the rails used to go. We're converting, and then all those were eliminated because we were a suburb that wanted to be a suburb. We did not, affirmatively, our zoning was we did not want to be a city. We did not want to be the district. We know why exclusionary zoning was done. It was converting something that was moving toward an urban environment into a classic suburb and a totally car-dependent suburb, like the way Loudoun County is right now. If you want to live in Loudoun County, you have to have a car. There really isn't a choice there. We're moving back toward urbanization, and that means being more like DC, more like Alexandria, where you don't have to have a car. You can get around easily. So it might be, in the next iteration of this, it won't be necessary because we've become urbanized enough and we have enough very robust options that it just is natural that we don't have to point out we don't need a car. At this point, we're still making that transition away from an auto-oriented suburb, which we were in the 1950s and 60s. We are moving away from that. So this, by having that term without having to depend on a car, that distinguishes us from Fairfax and Loudoun and those, other suburbs. So that's why I think technically, Commissioners Patel and Guevara are right that we really don't need it. It's signaling that we are different, that we are more like the district and Alexandria. So anyway, those are my
Commissioner
observations. Thank you.
Thank you. I skipped you. So
Regarding sustainability, there are those who will argue, and in fact, the prior presidential administration argued in the infrastructure, in the building back in the two major pieces of legislation that adopted, that moving toward electric vehicles was sustainable. Right. The problem with electric vehicles is so long as they are still cars, so long as they are still single occupant vehicles, all they are heavier cars. And heavier cars reduces the survivability rate significantly, even at 15 or 20 miles an hour, right? So if we want people to feel and be safe when they are walking or biking, we cannot assume that sustainability means anything non-litigable, right? We just can't. But to Commissioner Lantelmi's point, I want to go a step further, right? It doesn't distinguish us. The phrase "without having to depend on a car" does not distinguish Arlington from Fairfax or Loudoun County or Prince William County. It distinguishes Arlington of 2025 from the Arlington that we want to be, right? It distinguishes us from us. 9 in 10 Arlingtonians have cars, right? If you live anywhere in the county except for a limited geographical part, then you have to depend on a car to get around, right? We either want to be a society where you don't have to depend on one particular mode of transportation, or we want to be a society that continues to build an infrastructure where you do have to depend on it. And so I just, there's a world where I think it would be acceptable to say without having to depend on any particular modality, but we are talking about cars. And so let's be honest.
thank you. So I'm going to go to Commissioner Streiner, and then we are going to start talking about the goals.
Yeah, couldn't agree with Commissioner Lantelmi, and we are more. I think the difference is, to go back to what you were saying, Commissioner Steinberger, we don't need to call out bikes because the whole United States has not been developed around the bicycle. It has been developed around a car. You go to any suburb and in any state in this country, you will find a similar dependence on the automobile. And again, to not reiterate the point, but to add another layer to it, let's take an example of a construction worker who will live in the Barcroft development that we're approving bit by bit here. In this idealized future, they can still have the truck with all the equipment in the back that they can drive to sites in Alexandria, DC, Fairfax, wherever, because they're still going to need to drive to go outside, to go to work, go to a different construction site. It may change, every few months or so. But if they want to go to the grocery store, maybe they don't need to live in a world where they have to drive to the grocery store or to their friends, I don't know, their friend's kid's party or something. They can utilize these other modes and not have to be dependent on that car, because there are a lot of parts in Arlington right now, as Commissioner Weir pointed out, that you do need a car. And if we're working towards that future where you don't need it necessarily, you could use it if you like, but you don't need it. That to me makes this clause worthwhile having in there. I think it signals that we're moving in that direction, but it's bold in the sense that not everywhere else is doing this. Most places in the country aren't doing this. They're still like Commissioner Lantelmi said, out in Loudoun where I grew up. That's still, you got to drive 10, 15 minutes everywhere you go. And that's 2025. And it's going to keep being that way because they're not putting it in their vision statements. They're not putting it in writing. They're not saying the quiet part out loud. So I think it's important that we do.
Thank you very much. So if we have motions later, we don't have to discuss this again because we already had a great fulsome discussion. So moving on to goals. First one, equitable and inclusive. Can we pull the goals up on the presentation? So in the interest of time, I was going to go through them one by one, but I could just say, well, okay, so does anybody have anything to add to equitable and inclusive? Or is that one pretty good? Okay, then we'll go to livable. So I sent you all a motion earlier tonight, earlier this afternoon, which is to add the word natureful to the livable goal, the second goal. So to create a transportation system that provides enjoyable and natureful spaces and improves quality of life, affordability, et cetera. And the reason for adding this is it puts us better aligned with our 2019 Biophilic Cities Initiative goal, which is to just make sure that we are embracing nature. And so I think this is a nice way to bring that goal into this one so that we have fewer silos. This is something that some of our colleagues on the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission had also recommended. So I will be introducing that motion later. Any other comments or questions related to the livability goal? Commissioner Lantelmi.
Yeah, I just want, make clear Commissioner Howell recommended this, and I think his email did go around, his memo went around, and I think it's a very well-written, well-considered, and I think it's not a big ask that they're making. So I would be, whatever motion you make on that, I will be supporting.
Thank you. Okay, reliable, the reliable goal. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, the safe goal. Commissioner Berkey.
Yeah, I mean, and this might be like more of an overall question of how this all fits. There's 6 proposed goals. So my question is like, so we've seen from a safety perspective, we've certainly, and I always hate this because you always get into like, negative things and it's like reactive, right? There's a lot of really good things here. But I want to make sure we're not missing kind of the big picture too, which is sometimes we have safety issues. So, Park and George Mason Drive, we've upgraded that now. We have a signal there, but there was, I would call it quick strike action taken, it was like a year or two ago, right? How have processes like that, where we've had plans kind of in place, long-term plans, but then the county has clearly decided, no, we're going to take immediate action now. How have those processes informed this vision? I guess what I'm getting at is 6 goals are great, but like sometimes you just got to do something really fast. You need the stop sign. We can't have a 6-month study. And clearly in that example, the county decided we're just putting up posts tomorrow and then we're expediting a process. How has that example or others like it informed this process? Might need to use the other one.
Yeah, I would say that they're not mutually exclusive. They're definitely complementary. You all know we have our Vision Zero action plan, and that was developed before this process. But the SAFE goal 100% is the umbrella term, the umbrella goal and phrasing to basically nest our Vision Zero policies within. So even though we have a separate Vision Zero action plan, we expect that we'll be incorporating Vision Zero into the transportation plan, which it doesn't exist in the current one since Vision Zero evolved after our most recent master transportation plan. So yeah, when you're referring to like quick build techniques, getting things in the ground quickly, that still definitely falls within this. It's just one of many techniques that we expect will be used and talked about as we get into the strategies and the actions for the plan.
I don't expect a real answer to it, but I do have a follow-up question. So the one thing that nags me about this, and it's just any plan of this size and scope, is what happens when that occurs. Like there's clearly issues, but you've got 6 goals and we want to make sure we're kind of hitting all of them. That takes time, that takes planning, that takes review. In the meantime, like, the world keeps spinning on its axis. Like my kind of existential question is, in that scenario, is the safety just take priority and like livability and, sustainability kind of have to take a back seat right now because we just can only do one or two things at once versus all six. Does that make sense? So like that's sort of my existential question is when we have safety issues, we just don't have the time all the time to do all of this analysis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
I can see what you're
So
saying. in terms of
that's the thing,
trade-off
like
of
I would love to see kind of spelled out because these are all really laudable goals and we need to uphold all of them. But like safety is to me number one. It has to be. It has to be safe. It is a non-negotiable, right? The other stuff we can figure out probably for the most part. So anyway, that's something I would love you to consider, right? Because like safety is not necessarily the same as sustainability, right? Because it's an immediate issue too. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Well, can I ask a clarifying question? With this document, I can see this being used for like our proactive planning purposes. We're, Plan Langston Boulevard, we're doing some new things, we're going to apply this versus like a reactionary thing that a decision has to be made quickly. Do we pull out this document and go through the whole process, or is that kind of maybe a more abridged process that's like we're reacting to something that needs to get done fast?
Yeah, and I do think that's where the Vision Zero action plan comes in, is it does outline those very quick ways of responding, and it is its own process. So I think a good way to think of it is we'll have our new transportation plan, our comprehensive transportation plan, whatever we end up calling it, and the Vision Zero action plan nests within that. And that is our really like quick action document. We're updating it every 5 years. That's the opportunity where we're identifying those quick wins, those quick actions that we need to take. I understand absolutely what you're saying in terms of at the end of the day, we only have so many dollars, we only have so much time. We have to think about how we're allocating that across all of our goals. I think the thing we've observed as staff is that when we do take actions towards Vision Zero and towards safety in general, that in general does underpin a lot of the other goals. It makes our environment more livable. It provides more sustainable options to people because you feel safe riding a bike, you feel safe walking. So I would say in general, they are often complementary.
I bring it up because like I recall the issues. That's one example, right? Lubber Run. There are countless others. I bring it up because it's recent. We've all seen the light that's installed. It's a pretty recent example of county activity. But there clearly was a lot of discussion and a lot of outcry that predated any real concrete action. I'm not pointing fingers. It's just what happened, right? And what concerns me is just to ensure, again, these are process things, but the vision's important, right? Because vision imbues culture and imbues how the staff and the county looks at issues when they come up, right? And I just want to make sure that like the vision is that when there is a safety issue that has become apparent, that like that is prioritized and maybe above almost everything else immediately. And then we take a step back and we can do our planning, we can do our evaluation, we can have all of our wonderful Arlington processes. But like that is not that these goals don't just completely overwhelm the immediate safety need. That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay.
Thanks.
And well, to your point of like prioritizing safety. So in this fourth goal, we say prioritize a safe and comfortable travel experience. So we're prioritizing it. The sixth goal, clearly prioritize and communicate commuting demands. So is the fact that clearly is there like adding emphasis? Do we want to add that same emphasis to safety, clearly prioritize a safe and comfortable travel experience? Is that important to you or others?
I don't know that language is. I mean, staff they're listening, so I think the conversation is sufficient. Thanks.
Thank you.
When's the next one?
Okay, sustainable. Commissioner Patel.
I just want to go back to Commissioner Lintelmi's comment about Transportation Commission. I actually would like to remove the with less traffic, but for another reason. Going back to our original conversation on the vision part, I actually wouldn't even know what with less traffic means. Like, what kind of traffic are we talking about? So I think putting in the word multifaceted, develop a multifaceted transportation system that moves people, semicolon, supports a cleaner and greener I would strike out the with less traffic and just put multifaceted in front of transportation. So I will make an amendment for that, in addition to moving to amend based on the earlier conversation on vision.
Do you need multifaceted? Is that important to your?
I mean, I think it's inherent. We're really talking, which also goes to the vision. It's all inherent that we're talking about multiple ways for people to be able to move around within this county. So I actually said that for y'all because y'all seem to need it. But I'm happy not having it and just striking the language. I think it could add something here because you want to be able to reinforce to people that they are not dependent on a car. They can use whatever modality they'd like. So yeah, multifaceted, I think, helps the conversation in that space where I go back to my earlier comment, without depending on a car doesn't actually add anything.
Commissioner Lantelny.
Yeah, and that's why I'll be making an amendment, moving to amend, but mine will be bringing us in line with the Transportation Commission. So the phrase would be, instead of with less traffic, it would be through multiple options. Yeah.
Okay. Other comments on this one? Commissioner Guevara.
Well, not this one per se, but can I just make a general comment? So one of the things that I think these are sort of good proposed goals. I think my only concern is that I think when we do government programs and initiatives, sometimes we don't do sufficient sort of thinking ahead of time on how to measure these. Like I'm thinking, are they SMART goals? Are they specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound? And I feel like these are very broad. And I think these sort of goes back to what Commissioner Berkey and Commissioner Patel were mentioning, that it's sort of hard to really, at least for me, to kind of know which one is more important. How do we prioritize them? It just seems like a lot. And I think we would just be better off if we just streamline them and actually could see how we are going to measure these down the road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, that's a good transition into transparent and accountable, which is the sixth goal, because possibly there could be a way to add a measurement system. So additional comments or questions about the sixth goal?
Yes.
Commissioner Schreiner.
So that's actually really relevant. That was something I was kind of pinging around in my head, because where I used to work across the river, we would have Move DC, and what we would do for every capital improvement project, we would rate how it scored in terms of like each individual goal out of like 1 to 3 or something like that. 3 being the best, 1 being the worst. And that would sort of create a composite like Move DC score on how it advances all of the goals collectively. So something like that to kind of score them on these individual bases. 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 I was right the first time.
Basi.
But yeah, so something along that line that you are doing that analysis for each layer of this rather than just which one's more important. I don't know. So I think that something like that would be helpful here, but that's beyond the scope of this conversation.
So I think one of the things I was talking to Commissioner Weir about, one of the things that I have concerns around with regard to this transportation plan, just like generally when we're planning around transportation, is, we plan for the people that live here, right? We want people who live here to have options, a naturable and enjoyable experience, right? Safe experience. We want it to be equitable and inclusive. All of these things, it's great, but we're not the only ones using our roads. We're not the only ones using our transportation system. And oftentimes you hear in these different commissions, conversations about, oh, we're not driving as much anymore. We're not doing this, but we never get the data. We never actually get the data that says this is what the trend line looks like. This is the days on which we, put the thing out there and said there were 100,000 cars on our road, right? I don't even know if there's ever a way to decipher how many people are using our roads that are intra-county miles versus inter-county miles. And that's a place that causes me pause. It's funny because I messaged Daniel or Commissioner Weir one day because I was on Langston Boulevard at Spout Run, and it was just like the Beltway ahead of me. It was bumper to bumper traffic, and that is not just one day. So I often find it interesting when people say, oh, Langston Boulevard is not traveled, because for me, it is highly traveled during the times that I am leaving the office at 5 o'clock. It is bumper to bumper traffic. And there are differences, right? If you were to do a traffic study on Monday mornings, you're going to have a low rate of cars, right? But if you do that same study Tuesday morning in the same location, you're going to have a lot of cars. And maybe it's because people have alternative work schedules, but I would love to be able to see the data across a week, across a month, whatever it is that's best practice on collecting that data and being able to really put that before the public and allowing the public to see it. Because if we are really talking about creating a safe transportation system that is equally accessible and inclusive to all, we have to provide that data to everyone so everyone can be more responsible. And, you know, we, to Commissioner Guevara's point about villainizing one modality over another, you know, you have people saying bikers are not being respectful of the road, cars are not being respectful of bikers, pedestrians are not using crosswalks, right? We shouldn't be at odds with each other. We should all be able to use this transportation system, knowing what each of our rights and responsibilities are, but also being able to know that based in the data. So I'm hoping that as this process continues, that data finally comes out for us to be able to see and for us to all be able to agree upon. I think many of these processes really fail as a result of that. They fail to get the public buy-in in a way that we would want it. And I think that I know that you guys did a lot of outreach with a lot of people and a lot of organizations, but I know that there are a lot of people that were not included in this. And so we may never get to those people, but they still are people that are using this transit system, this transportation system. And, you know, despite the fact that their voices are not at the table, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be really accessing, looking, analyzing, and planning for the future based on the data. Thank you.
Commissioner Ware, you had your light on earlier. Do you have anything?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Moving on from these 6 goals, is there anything missing that you that you feel needs to be added? Commissioner Streiner.
Well, I had thought of this a little bit earlier today, but Commissioner Patel just kind of brought that up, this sort of regional component. We talked about this at the comp plan update not too long ago. And I know there was a little, there's in the reliable goal, there's a piece on the region. And I just think that's important because we are the connective tissue between a lot of Northern Virginia and the district. And there are a lot of people coming over the bridges and over our freeways and everything like that. So I think it's important to have that regional piece involved here. So it might be sufficiently mentioned in there in the reliable goal, but I just think it's worth bringing up here.
Okay. Commissioner Berkey.
This is really more for the transparency and accountability goal. I'll just say this real quick because I had a critique and I want to provide praise. I think quick wins as far as accountability are really important for government right now. We need to show people that government works and can work well. And I think over the last year, all the installations of the no right turn on red signs everywhere within like a day or two, it was very fast and noticeable. Those are the quick wins that I absolutely love and would love us to steer more into, which is things that maybe they don't make massive impacts, but they have impact. You can do them quickly, cheaply. I love it. Let's do more of that. That's clearly accountability too, because it's showing the public we can do this and here are the results right in front of you. I love that. Thanks.
So potentially some addition could be added to transparent and accountable and quickly.
I don't even think we need an addition. I just wanted staff to understand that that's the type of thing that you're already doing and I would love to see more of. And I think that clearly fits within the vision that you're presenting.
Okay. Great. And possibly add to Commissioner Guevara's point, something about performance measures, tracking and reporting, because that's not so much in there. Okay. Any final comments with community engagement? Commissioner Patel mentioned that. Okay, well then let's move to motions. Do we have?
I can read the regular motion if you want.
Okay.
So we can get it on the floor. Okay. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board approve the resolution in attachment 1 endorsing the vision and goals established for the refresh of the transportation element of the comprehensive plan.
I second.
Okay, so introduced by Commissioner Patel, seconded by Commissioner Lantelmi. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I just will speak to it saying that I'm going to move to amend.
Okay,
I'd like to.
shall we do that now?
Sure. I'm going
Okay.
to move to amend. Can we move? Thank you.
Which side?
I move to amend the proposed vision to strike without having to depend on a car and include after the word high quality and before the word sustainable, safe. Variety of high quality, safe, and sustainable transportation options. So include the word safe and before sustainable and strike without having to depend on a car. So people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities can move safely, comfortably, and seamlessly in Arlington. Everyone can rely on a variety of high quality, actually, maybe you don't need it because the safely is up there, a variety of high quality and sustainable transportation options to get them where they want to go when they need to be there. Arlington focuses on making travel an enjoyable experience for people, connecting them with nature, friends, family, and opportunities.
Okay, so your motion is to just remove without having to depend on the car.
Correct.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Berkey seconded. Weren't fast enough, Commissioner Guevara. Okay. We had a substantial discussion earlier. Does anybody have anything brief that they want to say? We've got lights. Okay. Well, Commissioner Weir, brief, please.
I'll just say that the goal is a world where safety does not require being within a 3-ton metal box.
Okay, thank you. So we ready to go to a vote? Commissioner Lantelmi,
Nay.
Commissioner Weir,
Nay.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger,
Abstain.
Commissioner Bagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara,
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey,
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner,
Nay.
Commissioner Robertson. Oh, okay. And I also say nay. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay.
Swing votes in the bathroom.
That's what that's.
The vote will,
4, 4, 1 at this point.
the
so,
vote will fail because it needs a majority.
Well, we would have a majority depending on.
He's the swing boy.
Yes. Okay. So Commissioner Robertson, the motion is to look at the proposed vision, remove the phrase without having to depend on a car. As of right now, we have 4 approving this, 4 nays,
You're the swing
and 1
vote.
abstention. So you're the swing vote. So would you like to?
Point of
remove
order,
this?
it
Yes.
is not a swing vote. A motion requires a majority of those voting. An abstention does not reduce the denominator. An abstention is not a no vote.
Okay.
It's simply a no vote. So with 10 at the table, a majority is 6.
Then I move to change my vote based on that revised guidance.
Can we do that?
Yes.
I don't know.
The vote is still open.
Okay. The vote is still open. Okay. Commissioner Steinberger.
Just clarifying, it would removing the phrase without having to depend on a car.
Yes.
I vote aye.
Aye. Okay. And Commissioner
I vote aye.
Aye. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 4 to 0. Okay, so that is approved.
I have a second.
Yeah, I have a motion.
Oops.
Okay, Commissioner Lantelmi.
I move that the planning commission recommend that the phrase "with less traffic" in the sustainable portion of the goals in the proposed master transportation plan update be removed and replaced with the phrase quote, "through multiple options," unquote.
Okay, can we advance the slide to the TC motion? I think this is that one, right?
I
Motion?
second that motion. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, this will bring us in line with the Transportation Commission. And I actually gave all the reasons earlier today. I don't have to repeat those.
Thank you. Okay, so let's vote then. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Purcell.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
And I also say aye, so that is 10-0-0. That passes. I also have an amending motion, which I emailed you all earlier today. So this is just adding the word "and natureful" to the second goal, livable. So my motion is the Planning Commission recommends to the County Board to make the following addition to the livability goal in the updated version of the transportation element of the comprehensive plan to reflect our 2019 commitment to be a biophilic city. Create a transportation system that provides an enjoyable and natureful spaces and improves quality of life, affordability, economic. So adding the words "and natureful" in between enjoyable and spaces.
I'll second.
I just have a question because when you read the motion, you included all that biophilic language. Do you just want to say that you're moving to amend the livable goal?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Not all the biophilic
Okay.
language, right?
Sure.
Okay.
I second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. Okay. Yeah, well, so I'm doing this to align us with the 2019 commitment to be a biophilic city. So that's the speaking to the goal. Okay, ready to vote. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Purcell.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Abstain.
And I also say aye, so we're 9-0-1. Okay, so are there any other amending motions?
Well,
So hearing none, we
well,
can
I just
vote on
wonder, I wonder if I can get a sense from my colleagues on the data question around transparent and accountable, that if we amended this to say clearly prioritize and communicate data and competing demands, along with competing demands, something like that, but like data needs to be in there.
That gets into the weeds a little bit.
It's fine for me. I
for a
mean, if
goal.
staff understands that that's what we're going to be looking for. I mean, I'm going to be looking for it in particular when this comes back in front of Planning Commission. I'm going to be looking for data, not just in the space of like who's using the roads, but along the same lines of data around it's equitable and inclusive, data around how it's promoting this livability. Like what Commissioner Berkey is talking about, right? Even though he's talking more around the hierarchy and the prioritization of the goals, I'm looking at like, where is the data along these spaces?
Yeah, it exists, and because we've seen it in TC. So yeah, we'll
we
be able
don't
to,
get it
we will be
here.
able to get that. They will be able to get that to us. It's out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and
Yeah.
it's great that TC
And that's
is
a good
getting
point.
it, but I think if we're not getting it, then certainly the public is not.
Right,
Like,
but it tells a great story. So that's why, yeah,
Yeah.
it's there.
okay, so we no amendment then, just as long as we are.
Okay, so then let's vote on our original motion as amended. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's 10-0-0. Okay, thank you very much to staff for your work on this and for this wonderful presentation and discussion. Thank you, Commissioner Streiner, for your work as the advisor to this update on behalf of the Planning Commission. So we still have commission business to go through. We will try to do that quickly. So first, we need to approve last month's meeting minutes. Mr. Clerk, I did send an update. There was a small typo that I sent earlier this evening. So with that update being changed, colleagues, I ask for your unanimous consent to approve the minutes. So moved. Mr. Pfeiffer, are there staff updates?
Yes, I do. I do have a staff update this month. Many of you know, or all of you know, our colleague Matt Matuzik. I have some bittersweet news. He will be leaving the county, but for an amazing opportunity. He is going to be becoming he has been hired as the planning director for the city of Falls Church. So it's a great opportunity for him. We know Matt started about a month prior to when I started at the county in 2008. So he has been here quite a while. He has, worked as an associate planner on the comprehensive planning team, then was promoted to be the Columbia Pike coordinator, and then was promoted again to be a master planner for the 22202 neighborhood. So he's done a lot of work at the county. He's definitely left his mark, and we're going to miss him, but we're all very excited for his next chapter.
As a fellow New Yorker, I want to say it's fantastic for him. I worked with him on Pentagon City. He really knows his stuff, and he's a great person to work with. So Falls Church is like, they're getting a primo guy.
Great.
Well, I have worked with him for 5 years in this planning commission. No, this is awful. I've worked with him for 5 years. On planning commission. And I say the same thing over and over and over again. And he is the only one that picked up what I was putting down. So kudos to Matt Matusik. Good for
He
him.
told me about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Steinberger.
Is there authorization to backfill his role? Do we know that yet?
I don't know that, but his position was in the budget, so I would imagine we would.
Okay.
But I don't know
think
for sure.
As that determination develops, I think I would want an update on that.
We can
Thank
do
you.
that.
Yes, very important.
And congratulations to him. It's a wonderful opportunity, but I do want that information. Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Steiner, did you have a comment?
No, I did not. I was
Oh,
just
okay,
replying
great.
to it.
Well, we're very sad to hear this news, but also very glad for Mr. Matusik and his new position. Maybe that will help us with some of our regional goals that we want to work on. So perfect. Any other staff updates?
That was the only one.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Steinberger, do you have an LRPC report?
We had a meeting last week of the LRPC discussing the comp plan and updates to that. More to come. I think we're having 3 more LRPC meetings on the comp plan. It's a lot of meetings. So more updates to come. But I think it is a big update. It's been a long time in the works. There's a lot of different goals and priorities that we're discussing, and I thought we had a really fulsome discussion in the context of the LRPC last week with that aim in mind. And a special shout out to Commissioner Lantelmi, who started the meeting for me when my toddler would not disengage from my leg. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll also add, at that meeting, staff highly encouraged all of us to reach out to our networks and encourage people to participate in the comp plan update process so that they can get as much community engagement as possible. SPRC update, Commissioner Bagley.
I didn't send out a report because there's no changes. We don't have any rosters, and there are some upcoming SPRCs, so please check your calendar and attend accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. ZOCO, Commissioner Schreiner.
Yes, we had a meeting this past month. We discussed 2 things. It was, I like to think of it as more of like an acoustic set. It was just me, Commissioner Peterson and Commissioner Lantelmi, just discussing the signs as well as a phase development plan for pieces over on with Barcroft. So that, again, if you want to go back and watch the recording, it was an interesting discussion. But
and Arl now covered it.
And
we
Arl
got
now
some
covered it
quotes
too.
from our team. So
Yeah.
great, thank you. Anything to add for MTP or what
No,
happened
I
tonight?
think we talked about enough of that tonight.
Okay, thank you. Form-based code, OG.
There's a meeting scheduled on June 25.
Okay, thank you. PFRC, Commissioner Bagley. Okay, thank you again to staff, applicants, and public speakers. Tonight's hearing with summary will be presented to the county board at their upcoming meeting by myself. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.